Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. It is exactly 8:25 on. No, I can't quite see that. It's 8:35, 8:35 a.m. South African time, and we are going to be going down under to Australia, to Perth in Australia, and we'll be talking with Haroon Cajee, ex-South African, living in Perth, has been there for very many years. And of course, he has been on this show a couple of times because he is a social commentator, and I follow all his posts on a regular basis. And from time to time, I do believe that this has to be shared as widely as we possibly can. Assalamu alaikum to you, Haroon Cajee. Welcome to the program. Lovely to have you on air today. In these moments of madness, moments of a global madness, which seems to have clearly drawn a line in the sand between the global north and the global south. Welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam. Thank you very much, Julie, for having me and allowing me to share some of my thoughts. I know I share all my thoughts with you normally, and I'm normally, quite prolific in posting these thoughts. But it's important to share this with your viewers as well, I believe, sometimes. Some of the key
Absolutely.
points. Yeah.
And I do look forward to your posts on a daily basis. And with your permission, of course, I do then forward them on as well to my other groups. So keep doing it because we need to hear these messages loud and clear. I alluded to the madness at the beginning of this year or way before, but I don't think anyone expected what happened at the beginning of this year. Perhaps, maybe it's naive for us to even say that it was unexpected. Perhaps we just took Donald Trump at all his ravings and rantings as a narcissist, and that's what he does. But I don't think any one of us actually expected what had happened. And in this day and age, I can't believe that we're seeing colonization and coups beginning to take shape by the global north on the global south. And of course, you talk about the world according to Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
Important to start off with the comment he made in a New York Times interview, where Donald Trump said that his power is only restrained by his own morality. And we know his morals are probably comparable to an alley cat, right? Not by law, not by courts, not by international rules. It was a clear statement of intent. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to roll this back. When the USSR, the Soviet republics, fell apart, there was this optimism in the world that we're going to a rules-based situation, that the world is going to embrace freedom and democracy. But it was all a fallacy and an illusion. And Donald Trump has really, I actually respect him. He's being honest that white supremacy and hegemony has always been the objective of the West. They couched it in terms of freedom and democracy, and they killed many people in the name of democracy and freedom and fighting for freedom. So, the current situation with Donald Trump has really just exposed the truth, right? And the truth is that the West has always been a malevolent, hegemonic power, right? And they've always been duplicitous and applied this primarily for their own people and their populace, but never afforded these rights and democracy and freedoms to the South, because it was not in their economic or geopolitical interest, never to their allies, never to Israel. And Gaza has stripped the West naked. Its duplicity is now undeniable. Now, when we talk about American democracy, I think the best example is to take Jacob Zuma, South Africa. How did Zuma manage to get away, or his acolytes manage to get away with literally looting the state? And please forgive me for saying this, but he looted the state. How did he do it? Let's unpack that. He did it by capturing the state. He put people into key institutions. He neutered key institutions. He controlled the parliament. He controlled the corruption commissions. He controlled the tax office. He controlled the parastatals, and then he went about looting it. Trump's done exactly the same. America is captured by Trump. The power of the House and the power of the Senate is lost. He has stacked the Supreme Court. He's put all his acolytes into key positions, and they're making decisions, and no one is able to challenge him. The state's been captured. It is a democracy, and while they had an illusion of freedom and a beacon of democracy around the world, and there was some restraint placed on them by international rules. The courts protected the executive power, but now Congress is weak, checks and balances don't exist anymore. And when this international rules-based order has collapsed at the center of the empire and the dominant culture, Muslims are the first to pay the price because we, as a collective, are the weakest. And if you take America and Russia, they operate on the same logic. They're both oligarchs now because
Mm.
it's the control of the very few powerful people and the billionaires that surround themselves around Trump, same as Putin, right? Checks and balances on paper, power above law. They've abandoned law.
So,
The law
so
doesn't.
Haroon, let me come in here. It's interesting that you made a comment about Zuma because it's such a coincidence. This morning, whilst we were watching World News, I said to my husband that this is exactly what Trump is doing, is exactly what Zuma did when he was running South Africa, and then of course the riots thereafter the riots. And I'm more than convinced that. He wasn't able to pull it off, or his daughter wasn't able to pull it off, including their supporters on their own. I'm convinced there was a foreign third force in South Africa that was driving the looting and the riots. I'm sure you remember the horrors of that. It was flashed across all across the world. But having said that, we are now saying, or you are saying, and I think the world is waking up to this fact that democracy in America has failed. That's the one part of this discussion. Part number two is, has democracy failed because Trump is so busy wanting to colonize the world and, also have coups take place in other parts of the world? So he's got his eyes set on Greenland, and he's made no a secret about it that he's going for them. He's going for the jugular as far as Greenland is concerned. And of course, what's happening in Iran now, what's unfolding currently in Iran, again, my husband and I were saying that there's a third force in play agitating the protesters because Trump wants a regime change in Iran as well. Once again, control of their resources, control of the oil, and of course, that would be very strategic for the West and for Israel to obviously have their puppets managing and running and ruling Iran.
Iran, I think clearly there's a geopolitical interest of the Israel and America and the West to have a pliant regime in Iran, a bit like more like the Arab states are. They'll do their bidding. They'll invest in American companies. They'll follow the Western master. There's a clear geopolitical interest. But I think the actual trouble on the ground is best summed up by what Bill Clinton said in 1995 or 96 when he was in power, or before he got elected, quite surprisingly in America. He said, "It's the economy, stupid," meaning that elections are about the economic condition of the country. And I think a lot of all this instability has got to do with that a large part of the population were born after the revolution, so they don't buy into the old narratives. Secondly, people are hungry, poor, the currency is devalued, the sanctions have paid a huge price on that. There's been a lot of economic mismanagement by the theocracy in Iran. And there's a lot of other issues that are probably not being spoken about. And I know that you need third force agitators, and I'm sure they'll be encouraging people to do what they're doing. But I don't believe that's the root cause. You do need an underlying reason for a revolution. And normally, hungry stomachs is a great ingredient for a revolution. And that's what's happening in Iran. Bear in mind, the president said recently, we have no solution. They nearly had to evacuate Tehran a couple of months ago because there was no water. So I think it's a bit more than just saying it's agitators that are coming into Iran and causing all this trouble. I think a lot's got to do with the poor government as well, a mixture of poor economic management locally, as well as the sanctions that are crippling them.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. We will come back. More to unpack, and keep in mind. All right, my producers told me to continue with the discussion. Whilst Donald Trump is busy wanting to rule the world and take over the rest of the world, what's happening with democracy in America itself? We're still hearing about joblessness. We're hearing about people that aren't even able to pay, to put food on the table. And a whole host of other social issues in the country, not forgetting the fact that there's a lot of racism that plays out amongst its own citizens as well. What does that picture look like? Okay, please unmute yourself. There you go.
Right. America has always been a lopsided democracy of the haves and the have-nots. For many years, this has been the fact. More than 50 million people are what they call the working poor that earn very little money below the poverty wage, right? 7 out of 10 personal bankruptcies in America relate to the failure of the health system, just for health bills. They go bankrupt because they can't afford to treat themselves, get medication, and other stuff. And then, of course, there's this deep rooted racism against other people, and their fear of being overtaken by people from the South, the South Americans. And of course, undoubtedly, there's a huge amount of racism against the African American. Now, when you come to democracy, right? Democracy, yes, works in some instances, but it requires very strong institutions. And it has proven that the home of democracy has proven to us that it's a very fragile institution, democracy is. It takes very little to upend it. Take over the Supreme Court in America, and you can do what you want, which is what has been proven with Trump getting away literally with murder, right? And then he's taken over the institution. So democracy is an illusion. You know, this is my personal belief, right? We need malevolent dictators, not, I mean, we need benevolent dictators rather than a full blown democracy, because maybe Imam Ghazali in the 10th century was correct in saying, and I'm going to say this, it's controversial, that the people are imbeciles and they don't really know who to choose.
Mm. Okay, Haroon, so much more to uncover with you. Um, I have a regular listener and viewer, Abdul Razak Ismailov. I think he's based in Estonia in Eastern Europe. He's posted a few very interesting comments, and I'd like you to respond to it. He says, and of course, you now in Australia and we are South Africans. So he's saying, you as South Africans need to absolutely reinstate your nuclear weapons program so as to deter the colonizers. I must tell you, this is something I discussed with my husband as well. I said, South Africa is such a mineral rich country that I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump wants to come in and colonize us yet again. We've been colonized for so many years. We're just 30 years into democracy, and you'll have someone like Donald Trump setting his sights on us. But that's my side comment. But to carry on with Abdul Razak's comments, he says the Trump regime and his fascist heads of state have threatened to effectively re-implement apartheid. The EU, UK, and Ukraine would also praise any potential terrorist attacks by Washington and Tel Aviv. He goes on to say nuclear weapons were used to reinforce apartheid. But 30 years later, let's just get that up on screen. Such a system from re-emerging. Americans aren't going to make a snuff film of their triangular B-2 bombers flying over Johannesburg if you have nuclear armaments again. So I'm sure you can make sense of what he's trying to say. And of course, he also alludes to the fact that we are a very mineral rich country. And that's why I too had the thought that Donald Trump, could be setting his sights on us as South Africa, taking into account that we have taken apartheid Israel to the ICC and the ICJ. Over to you, Haroon. I've given you quite a plateful there. Please unmute yourself. I can't hear you.
I haven't muted myself at all. So
Oh, there you go. Okay. Carry on.
Let's look at the nuclear weapons we had. I think we had 6 nuclear weapons at the time of independence, and it was handed back to the Americans and it was decommissioned by Nelson Mandela. Now, those weapons were short-range tactical weapons, right? They were not long-range ballistic missiles. So our delivery capacity, even at the time when we had it, was very localized, very local. It had no way ability of reaching the North America or any part of the North, right? And today we don't have that technology. I don't think it's in our interest to. Nuclear weapons work on the principle called mutually assured destruction, MAD, right?
Oh,
And that means if I use it and you use it, we're going to destroy each other. And that's the deterrent. Now, if it ever comes to a nuclear war, this world will be destroyed as we know it. If let's assume Russia and America start deploying their weapons, right? And not just tactically, but just carte blanche, I'm going to fire as many as towards you, and you're going to fire as many towards me. The world as we know it will basically get destroyed. So I know that's a strong emotion, and I know people look at Kim Jong Il in North Korea and say, well, hang on, they're not messing with him because he's got a nuclear weapon, right? But it tempers the urge to invade, right? Because if he just knocks it against South Korea, I mean, there'll be massive casualties. But I don't think that's a solution for South Africa, frankly.
okay. We're going to have to wrap up. My next guest is online. It's always such a pleasure picking your brain on these matters. I do wish we had more time to continue this very important discussion. My final question to you then would be, do you believe that the world order as we know it is going through a shift and a change, and a drastic one at that? And what do you foresee at the end of all of this? The issue with Greenland, do you think that talks between Rubio and the Greenland, or Denmark rather, would produce positive results for the future of Greenland? Or do you believe that Donald Trump is going to go gung-ho into Greenland and take it by force? Your thoughts on that?
Greenlanders, and it'll cost him 20,000 or 50,000 a person to bring them on board, right? Because they are self-autonomous under Denmark, right? So it's very easy if he really wants it, and the people of Greenland want it. Sorry, my grandson's realized I'm at the backyard, so he's turned up.
Yes, I can hear
And
him.
and I think what we have to remember is Donald Trump's tenure is coming to an end in about just over 2 years, right? So the question is, what will happen post Donald Trump? Will there be another forceful personality? Will America vote in another right-wing conservative government like Donald Trump? And I don't think they will, right? Because they're suffering economically. He might be good at the global stage and making them feel good about white supremacy, but locally a lot of people are suffering because of the cost of living. So I think we need to look at this. This could be, maybe some countries are just biding their time. It's a short game. Just wait a few years. He's out of the picture. We'll come back to normalcy. That could be one thing. Or, I don't know, it could be a tectonic shift, and this will empower China, it'll empower Russia, and everybody will go and decide, well, I'm just going to settle my squabbles by force. I'm going to take over
Okay.
what I want, and I'm going to grab it. No one can stop me.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but I do think we need to have another talk sometime soon, and pick up from where we've left off. And undoubtedly, when I do hook up with you again, there are going to be so very many changes to this current discussion. So I do look forward to talking with you again. Go well, keep us in your du'as, and keep on writing those articles. I truly enjoy reading them. Go well, Haroon. Thank you indeed for your time. Assalamu alaikum to you. It is exactly 8:55 and we're going to be moving on. Please stay with us. Let's just take a quick short break and we will be joined by our next guest.